You're listening to Coffee and Culture on Talk 1260 and 103.7 KTRC, streaming at santafe.com. We're on the radio and streaming just after 2 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. My name is Matthew Chase Daniel. I'm usually the host every other week, but this week we're flipping things around and going upside down a little. And instead of me interviewing someone interesting is interviewing me. And so that is Janice Wall, who's here with me. So welcome, Janice, to Coffee and Culture. And now you should welcome me, since you're doing the interview.
Welcome, Matthew. Yeah, I'm so excited to be able to interview you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I've had an interest forever in axle art, the truck, the whole phenomenon. But recently, what really sparked me to want to interview you is that I found out that you come from the Boston area. Mm-hmm. So very different worlds. I, too, come from the Boston area, so there's a connection there.
Yeah.
And wondering about how that fits for you or how it affects you. And the other thing I know from just a little bit of talking with you and seeing the podcast you did with your mother, that your parents were from very differing backgrounds.
Yeah.
They went their separate ways, and you had those two worlds. So I'm thinking two worlds here.
Well, we're here out at your place in Galisteo, and it's like this beautiful open desert landscape with mountains and ringed by mountains in this wide open valley, and it's so different from where we both come from.
Yeah.
And when I first came out here, I felt really exposed, like I was looking to find like some little river bottom or canyon to hide out in, because it was so open and I felt unsheltered. I felt exposed. And then now when I go back, and I still have family in Massachusetts, and when I'm like driving or walking, I'm like, when do I get over the hill and get to see where I am? Because I just feel like an ant in a grassland or something. With all the trees over. And so now my discomfort has shifted the other way. And not that one is good and one is bad, or one is right and one is wrong. It's just how we adapt to place. And the culture in the West in general is, I would say, in a way more open, not more liberal or progressive necessarily, but more like you do what you do and this person does what they do, and as long as you're not shooting them in the head, you're allowed to live your own way out here, largely, and in California and in Arizona and in Nevada, all in the West. Whereas New England felt a little more tied up and social norms and ways of dressing and ways of behaving. And there's certainly that's not universal in either place. But I found that really beautiful and wonderful and enriching. And part of it was like in high school reading Beat Generation writers, Ginsberg and Kerouac and Gary Snyder and Lou Welch and others who were invoking that sort of Western openness. And so it was very inspiring to me. I was like, I got to hitchhike out to California and see what's going on. So Boston, I lived till I was, just for the first 6 months of my life, both my parents were in school. My mother was doing a year at Radcliffe, at Harvard, and my father was at Harvard Law School, and my brother is a year and a half older, so he was there. I was born, then my father graduated, they both graduated, and we moved to New York City for 5 years. And then after that moved to sort of the mountains in northern Connecticut, near the Berkshires, where my mother still lives near there. But then my parents split up. My father ended up living in New Haven for a while, but then in Boston for a while. So I would go up and visit him a lot in the summers, and when I had breaks from school through high school. And so that city life of Boston was really appealing because I lived in a tiny little town that was farming and tourism and stuff. Much bigger than Galisteo, smaller than Santa Fe.
Yeah. So did their varying backgrounds, did you feel that? Did you sort of feel like you were going into different worlds when you were with each of them? Did you
a little bit,
struggle
not
with it?
strongly, because I lived with them. I mean, they split up when I was 11, I think. So as a kid, it's just it was what it was, and they were a couple, and they were together, and we all create our own worlds, right? So and kids don't know any better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you start once you're in school and exposed to other kids, you start creating that peer group as your influence. But in the early years, it's your parents and their friends and whatever, and they were interested in like being out of the city and like growing a garden, and we had a horse, and we collected wild mushrooms and violets and went fishing in the pond, and all this sort of. This is 1970, early 70s, and so it was a time of people leaving cities and going out to the country, and they weren't like crazy hippies, but they weren't buttoned up city people either. And my father's family, some of them came over like 1640 to Newburyport, Massachusetts, sea captain, all of that. So descendant through that sort of old New England Yankee culture. And he grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut, which is like a mill town. His family were professionals, but, sort of not white collar, not more blue collar, but, engineers. And, so he went to school in philosophy and then in law. And then, whereas my mother's family were from Washington, D.C. and New York City, Jewish immigrants from Minsk and Pinsk and Belarus and at the turn of the century, 120 years ago or now, however long ago it was, 115 years ago, and built a life there. And they were Jewish. My great-grandmother, who I knew, who came from Europe, from the old country, as a 16-year-old, and then raised her son, my grandfather, in New York. So I knew her when she was old and I was young, and she worked as a garment worker in the Lower East Side, sewing her whole life, and was an ardent communist. And my grandfather was communist, and then not communist. He was a communist and then a capitalist. And culturally, they were Jewish but not religious, practicing religious Jews. My mother and her husband are more practicing Jews than she ever was as a kid, or my grandfather or great-grandmother were. So that comes around. So yeah, those were different cultures, but ones that were accepting of each other, I guess.
Yeah. Just extending from each other, relating to each other, not vying for dominance.
Right, and where we all lived in this Salisbury, Connecticut, in this little town, was far from either of their families. There were families around, and we saw it was related, but they were sort of able to do their own thing in a nice way.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've thought often that as time goes on, young people get further and further away from knowing a grandparent that came from Russia, or and so that sense of knowing your own family with the people that immigrated, and other people's families with immigrant members that were young people have sort of moved away from that, so they don't have that connection.
Well, I think some do. I mean, it depends on the crowd. If your parents are immigrants from Chihuahua here in Santa Fe and you grew up here, you're very connected to that language and culture. And so it's not Eastern European Jews anymore. That young people are getting further and further from that.
Yeah.
In that group, and certainly
Yeah.
English immigrants from the 1600s. People don't really know who those people were.
Yeah. So some people feel they are immigrants or connected with immigrants, and some people have much less feeling of that connection.
Right. And some people pass, and some people don't pass. Like, I can identify as Jewish and grandchild of immigrants, or I cannot. I can just be a white person or whatever. And that's not true for everybody.
Yeah, right. So
we got to go to a break.
Okay.
We'll be right back. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture. My name is Matthew Chase Daniel, and I'm being interviewed by Janice Wall here in Galisteo today.
Yeah, so the route to Santa Fe from that, and you already showed how there was an interest, how you were drawn to it initially through the reading and so forth. Did it take you very long to get here, or it was a winding path?
So in high school, I didn't travel a whole lot as a kid with family. We went to Iceland once when I was 5, which was wonderful, but not out here really. So when I was in high school, I did some trips with friends, like a driveway car, which is like someone's moving from Boston to LA and they want their car transported. So you as a person, they'll give you a car and you have 9 days to get it and drop it in LA, and you can do whatever you want. I don't know if that still exists, but so we would get some driveway cars and drive out to California and come back. And so that happened a little in high school. And then I did some trips hitchhiking, like to Rainbow Gathering in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, or went to Boulder, Colorado, because that was like a hub of culture that was interesting to me. So I hitchhiked out there one summer and spent a while and hitchhiked back, I guess. I don't remember how I got back. So I did things like that. And then I lived in Ojai, California, at a place called the Ojai Foundation when I was right after I graduated from high school. And I lived there for a year. And that was a place that brought in teachers from different like spiritual and religious traditions, from Native American culture and from Tibetan culture and Christian culture and Sufi culture and Mexican Huichol shaman and all different things. And they would do these workshops for people who would come from LA or Santa Barbara and spend a night or a weekend or a week there. And that was actually the director of that, the head of that was Joan Halifax, who runs Upaya Zen Center here. So I ended up there for a year. And then I went to college in New York at Sarah Lawrence College. And there I met my wife, Julie, who was Julie Daniel, now Julie Chase Daniel. And we got together my first year at school there, and we're still together. And she grew up here. So we lived in New York for a while. We lived in Paris for a while. And then her grandmother had cancer and was dying. And so we came back to help her grandmother, who had done a lot of the work of raising her as a kid and was in Las Cruces, is where Julie's from. And so Julie helped nurse her grandmother through death, and then we stayed. Wow. So it wasn't, so that's how I ended up here.
I didn't know that Julie started out here too, Well, jumping from that, so here you are here, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you do with the truck and the various events that you have. And I start out already thinking that the idea of a step truck, which I think originally was a Twinkies truck, is that right?
I think it was host Twinkies and Ding Dongs and Yodels. And
and you get this truck and you make it into an art gallery, you drive it around town, and people coming out of maybe having lunch at Counterculture or working out at Chavez get to have a glimpse at some artwork, and it's extremely varied. I never know what's going to be there. So already I find there's a sort of element of humor in that, or outsiderness, or something lighthearted. So the other day I went to your program, Migration, Immigration, Art, Awareness, and Action. And as you introduced the artists and the woman who was the lawyer, Allegra Love, you mentioned with Louis Tapia's work that among the very long list of what is true of his work is humor. And you said laughingly, that's one of my favorite features.
Yeah.
The talk continued, the people being interviewed continued expressing a great deal of pain, suffering, and injustice, but also telling little personal stories of doing drawings of the people waiting to cross the border, or little exchanges that had delight in them. So anyway, I wanted to ask you what you think about the kind of relationship between humor and social activism.
Yeah, well, I think, especially in our world this year and the last number of years, where a lot of people of conscience and intelligence are a bit freaked out and upset, and every day there's new things being destroyed by the federal government, and people being shot, and on and on and on. It's an old story. I don't need to recount it. Everyone knows. Listening to this probably knows what I'm talking about. So it can be despairing, and I think social activism and speaking out against what's happening is important. But it's also we're all on overload, and so it can be hard to hear when people are shouting about what's wrong or what should happen. And I think humor now, but in anything you want to express, what makes something funny is interesting. Like there's all this stuff in humor, like stand-up comics get criticized and canceled because they're talking about stuff that no one's supposed to say anymore, right? And so people get in trouble. But the nature of humor is you're talking about a truth that isn't spoken about, or things that conflict. There's some tension and conflict that makes things funny, I think. And so there's meaning inherent in anything that's funny to me. And it also, we laugh, and laughter is a way of breaking down a barrier. So if you see something that's funny, or you hear something that's funny, you react to something because it's funny, your defenses of like, oh, I don't want to talk about migration or immigration or someone being shot in Minneapolis. But if there's some humor involved, you bring it in. And you see this in like late night talk show. Like a lot of people get their news from comedians. I don't watch that stuff. Stephen Colbert, and I don't remember all their names. Jon Stewart, and so a lot of people get their news from that, and they're able to watch it because of the humor somehow. Yeah. And the humor points out the ridiculousness of some of the things. Yeah. And so I think that's for me why I like humor. And a lot of the stuff that Axel shows, there's humor, not all of it, but I feel like it really draws people in. And so you get a spoonful of medicine and a spoonful of sugar. Yeah. So it's sort of, so trying to keep your energy level up to do the work, so I think requires that you are looking at the joy aspect of your life too, or the kind of fluky, but that not getting to the point where you just can't move because you're so overwhelmed. Yeah. And I would say also Jerry Wellman, who we run Axel together, also appreciates humor. And I make fun of him, and he makes fun of me, and we have a great time making fun of everything, and making fun of all the artists we invite to show, whatever. I think there's joy too. And I mean, we got to go to another break. So
okay.
I'll continue in a minute.
Okay.
This is Matthew Chase Daniel. I'm being interviewed by Janice Wall, and we were talking a bit about humor and, about joy and how you have to embrace joy in order to move forward and not despair, right?
Yeah.
Sort of what you're saying?
Yeah. Keep your energy up.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, along with all the dark things that are happening in the world. The sun is shining in through these windows in your house and bouncing off this table, and that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And walking, even if it's just walking through the snow to my car and scraping the ice off this morning to drive into town. The little crystals of ice and the morning sun, beautiful, like just beauty everywhere. Appreciating that. I'm alive another day. This is great.
Yeah. I did a New Year's home retreat sort of thing. And the thrust of it was to just be appreciating beautiful stuff. And I had a really hard time with it. Mm-hmm. I was like, wait a minute. Look at what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
But I did make myself struggle with it because I realized that is the source of keeping yourself able to move forward, the energy level. Well, I wanted to move into collaboration from that because I think there's also a relationship in that. I know much of your work has been done in collaboration with Julie, your wife, who's a writer and a poet. And a couple of the projects I'm aware of were called Direct Exposure. Mm-hmm. And then just before COVID, you did something called Blue Fold.
Yeah. So,
then Jerry.
And then I've done a bunch of collaborations with Jerry and with others. And in a way, I feel like a lot of the work I do and that Jerry and I do at Axel or that I do with the Lena Wall, which is large murals on the corner of Lena Street and 2nd Street, different artists changing through, or this Coffee and Culture, talking to artists and thinkers and scientists here, has to do, it's not exactly collaboration, but it's I find joy in having other people helping to empower other people to do their work. So like Axel provides a space, or the Lena Wall print stuff up huge and glue it up and lots of people see it, or here having a conversation and sharing ideas. There's a lot of joy in that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in the world who feel like they have something to say or something to show. And I used to feel like I get up in the morning and I want to work in the studio all day. And I'm just driven to make things, and make. And at a certain point I got tired I was like, wait, do we really need more things? But I meet other people who really think they want to make things. And I'm like, oh, well, if you think you want to make something, I've developed all these skills to help make things or help promote things or help raise money for things. And so I feel like I'm, an arts enabler for other people. Yeah. And that brings joy and satisfaction in not the same as making my own work, but not unrelated. And the collaboration work, it's a struggle to collaborate with people because we all have our own brains and our own ideas and our own feelings about how something should go. So for me, it's always finding that right balance of... would you consider it to be like a conversation in some ways, or it's an exploration, but... some of it is collaboratively in a series of conversations to create parameters for a work, and then doing the work somewhat separately and then bringing it back together. So in the Blue Fold was a project that Julie and I did, where I was making photographs and she was writing, and I did some writing too, and she contributed to the photography process. It was an arts residency on La Garette Key, which is a little island in the Gulf of Mexico, and they bring you out on a boat and drop you off and pick you up a month later, and you got to bring all your food, and there's no internet and no phone, and it's great arts residency through the National Parks Arts Foundation. But, so the result of that was a book and an exhibition of my photographs and Julie's writings. So we were constantly in conversation for the month we were out there and talking about stuff, and we brought a lot of books, so we were reading stuff, and it was about climate change and the nature of the island and the history of the island and what washed up on the island and what lived in the sea around the island. And
did you know much about it before you went there, or
we did some research, and then we brought a lot of material to research, a lot of ebooks, the books we downloaded and read. Because when you're off like that, time is really changes and becomes much bigger, because there's no phone calls, there's no internet, there's no television. There's just you and the sun and the ocean and the house and the kitchen and some cabbages, whatever that you brought.
So you actually get to a point where you say, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? I have this open time."
Yeah. So you have much more time. I have much more time that month than I've had any month since then to sort of explore and think and read and all of that. So that's super valuable about that.
Yeah, I wondered, I know you've done some work that isn't in collaboration and how you see the difference. And one of the things I was thinking, I just recently heard an interview by Ezra Klein of Stephen Batchelor, and he was talking about how do I stay open. And one of the things that he said was that you can't really have a conversation if you don't have some doubt, which means asking a question. Because if you both know everything,
then you can't listen.
Then you can't listen. There's no exchange.
Right. So working without collaboration, it's just you and you.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be you and, if you're making a sculpture out of twigs or something, the twigs are part of the conversation. What can they do? How far can this sapling bend before it breaks? What form? Yeah,
you don't necessarily, just because it's your own work, know exactly what you're going to be doing.
Right. I rarely make work where I'm just starting with a blank canvas and okay, now I'm going to make a thing. It's much more working with the material or an idea or whatever. Photography. I was talking to a friend of mine, Jeff Weiss, an artist, who was saying as a photographer, he sees photography as a process, like editing. You're looking at everything and choosing what to put in the frame.
Yeah.
Rather than starting with nothing and creating something from nothing. And I agree with that. And so what are you having a conversation with when making photographs? The whole world, everything that you can see around you.
Yeah.
Over the course of
and
a minute or an hour or a year or whatever, you're walking around with your camera thinking about things. But I do think a conversation where you're sharing ideas and receptive to other people's ideas is very enriching. I mean, Julie and I have been together for 40-something years. So
it works.
Yeah, we still have interesting conversations every day. So,
I love it. It's great. So I wanted to ask you, we're so aware of how expensive these cities have gotten, and they're losing their galleries and definitely losing the neighborhoods where artists could live and so forth. And I have this feeling that there's something that you've put together with the truck as an art gallery that frees you in who you can include in it. And I know earlier you had said it's not that you don't sell artwork out of it, but how does that
work?
Money thing work?
Yeah. We have to go to our last break, so I'm going to answer that in just a minute. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture on Talk 1260 and 103.7 KTRC, streaming at santafe.com. podcast you can find on your whatever platform at Coffee and Culture with Matthew Chase Daniel. So we were talking about
money.
My favorite thing. I love it.
I love its humor.
Yeah, some people think it's bad, but it's so handy. At Axel, whether it was by design or by chance, I can't really say for sure, but we created something that has very low overhead. So we pay insurance and gasoline, and we have no rent, no mortgage, no internet, no electricity. Engine replaced. We've done 2 or 3 times over the years. But in general, it's very flexible and low budget compared to other art galleries or art museums or things like that. And so when we're choosing art, we're not choosing it because we have to resell it. And I don't begrudge that other galleries are choosing art because of that, because otherwise they have to close their doors unless, they have millions to just keep dumping in over the years. And so we'd never wanted to do it that way. And we do sell work, and that's good for the artists. We split it 50-50 usually, any sales. So that helps support what we do and supports them to continue doing what they do. Other artists, when we don't have work for sale, we have small honoraria that we give, and that helps a bit for them. But yeah, we don't have that financial pressure. And like museums don't have that financial pressure of selling. Galleries do. We live somewhere in between. But yeah, I don't think we've never picked art saying, well, we don't really like it, and it's not very good, but I'm sure we could make a lot of money selling a bunch of this.
Yeah, you're right.
So we've avoided that,
telling the artist to continue to make that. Because,
can you make more of those red ones? Yeah,
because they sell.
Yeah, they're selling.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's ever been a struggle for Jerry or myself to try and balance that. It just comes naturally to us, and it comes to us through our own work. Like I've made series of photographs that sold a lot, and it was great. And then I wanted to keep that gave a lot of energy to it, and I made more and more. And then at a certain point, I felt like I'd sort of tapped out that series of photos made in a certain way. And so it's not that I decided to never make another, but I rarely make any in that series, and because I don't see what to make anymore. And so I'm making other stuff now that's not saleable or isn't even for sale. I'm making a piece in Los Angeles in a garden, David Horowitz's 7th Street Garden, which is this empty lot that this artist in LA turned into a garden with local plants and a little stage, and there's poetry readings and installations and different events that happen in that garden. So he invited me to do something. So I'm collecting bits of palm trees, palm fronds that fall off palm trees in Venice, in LA, and then clay from Glassell Park, where my son lives, from his backyard, and sort of building the trunk of a palm tree out of a palm tree in local soil. And it's ephemeral. It's not for sale.
It'll wash away.
When it rains, that'll dissolve the clay, and the whole thing will fall into a pile of palm fiber. And I really enjoy doing things like that. And that's part of maybe what I was saying before about not wanting to make more objects to fill up the world.
Yeah, that's the other. Everyone talking about if they've been working for 20 years, what do I do with
all these right?
All these paintings that are piled up or whatever.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I mean, I think a lot of people in the last.
It's a lot of material.
Of our generation and older generation, making and having the ability to make it even if they're not selling it all, and then you get to facing your age and the end of life, and where does it all go? And even people who sold a lot of stuff, and then the collectors are aging out.
And
here in Santa Fe, there are a lot of Texan collectors who are.
They already built a couple of wings onto their houses.
Right, and their kids are inheriting the house, and they're like, "What do we do with all these paintings?" And so the secondary market is flooded with stuff, and maybe that didn't exist in the 40s or the 30s. Not everyone was an artist. Now everyone's like, "Oh, I'm an artist, and that's what I do," and you paint away, and without. And that's not. There's nothing bad about that. It's just it's an issue for how do you, what do you do with that work?
Yeah. And if you make things quickly, I remember I'm not one of those people. It takes me forever, and so in a way it's good because it takes me a long time to use the material. But I do know there are people that do wonderful spontaneous things where they can do 5 in a day,
right?
And there's very little actual time and investment in the materials with that. So that's kind of a modern art thing to work quickly like that.
Yeah, I've been making this last week or two little porcelain bowls, and I think about 12 a day. And and it's part of this same thing I was talking about not wanting to make things or not knowing what to make. And there's something about a ceramic bowl that, everyone in every culture maybe across the planet for thousands of years have been making little things to eat off of. And it may be all like in the Amazon, it may be some sort of tropical palm frond that you're cutting, you're chopping with your machete and
hollowing out something.
Putting some food on it and then throwing it in and letting it rot away. Or it might be glass, in ancient Greece or ceramic or whatever. So it feels very elemental and it feels meaningful. Like this is a bowl, you can put a scoop of ice cream or some cereal or whatever and eat out of it. And it's both like the highest form of art and the lowest form of art at the same time.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a potter, and I have many, many of her pieces. And she always said she wanted them to be very affordable so you could bring them and that people would enjoy them in their homes. Yeah. And I thought, I have enjoyed those bowls and et cetera for years.
Right.
And every time I take it out, it sparks something for me, which is different. Yeah, it's different. Coming from someone.
And I have bowls because I used to make some bowls and stuff, and I haven't for years until this week. But I gave away all the best ones, and then we kept all the sort of seconds. So I eat them and like, God, the bottom of this one is too thick, and this one the rim isn't good. And I was like, I gotta make some new ones so I can see the better ones, And then occasionally I'll go to a friend's house and have dinner, and they'll serve food in one of my pieces. I'm like,
whoa,
that actually wasn't so bad.
Yeah, I usually, if my friend is over, I will announce to whoever's here. Yeah. This is the plate she made, and
it's magical.
It
Clay
is.
And fire and turning mud into glass
and glaze. It doesn't. You never quite know what it's going to do.
I know. I don't love the glaze part. I'm afraid of that. But
I've sort of lost track of how much.
Yeah, we have another minute of the last section. We're ending.
Oh, and then we're ending.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, just one quick other thing that I wanted to ask you about. What your feeling is about it. You came from the Northeast for some wonderful educational institutions, etc. And something has happened, which I know a lot of people are complaining about. I don't think they should destroy education by any means, but there is this complaint about it talks to itself and prioritizes certain ways of thinking over
I think universities are a big battleground right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
I think the school we only have a little bit, but like the school I went to in college, Sarah Lawrence, and then I went to school a bit in France when I was there, in ethnographic film production and photography and things like that. But at Sarah Lawrence, it was much more, rather than giving you a bunch of facts, it was giving you tools to think better.
Yeah.
And like, how do I think and how do I evaluate things for myself? Critical thinking. And so I think that never goes out of style.
Yeah. But I also think you talk to many, many people who don't have the same backgrounds, and yet the enrichment that you bring out from what they have to say and the way you're enriched.
Well, I think people are interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are very interesting.
Well, thank you.
I'm so glad to have had this conversation.
Yes, thank you